Hi, we're going to show you some great new stuff coming out in the next release of Attero, due out at the end of Q1 2014. We're introducing these features based on feedback from Spirent, and a little bit more detail about these features. They are really for the Attero and Attero X products, just to clarify, this is not for the Attero Lite product. We have beta demos available at the end of this month. Some of the stuff that you will see today is already available as beta demos, a bit more at the end of January. And then the target for the general release, the GA release, is the end of March. We've got a bunch of whole new features which we'll show you today. A feature called Who's Using the Box, again based on feedback from customers that they want to know who's connected to the box. Filter setup is another key area that you guys have been asking for, the ability to set up filters manually in a much easier way. We've called this Filter Builder, and we'll show you a demo of that. Also the ability to change impairments without having to start and stop the box. That's another feedback from customers and yourselves, and again you'll see how that works today. And then the ability to do all those changes starts without the start and stop. We'll also do this without any hits or packet drops. And then finally, another big feature which we'll hope to show you in demo today, bandwidth control. Not just bandwidth control, the basic format, but also the ability to do policing and shaping of the traffic exactly as required by the market and by customers. Okay, well, let's look at the first of these features, which is called Who's Using the Box. Ultimately, what we want to do here is look at the Attero GUI. We're going to connect through to the GUI. Connect through to the box using the GUI. When we connect now, you'll see a new field in the connection box called username. And obviously, this indicates who's using the Attero, and you enter your name as you're connecting to the box. When we connect to the box, if someone else is actually connected to the box, it'll actually pop up with a message saying somebody else, Mihao, is here currently connected to this Attero. So again, you know that someone else is connected to it, but more importantly, you know who is connected to it. Okay, so that's a feature that will be released in this next release at the end of Q1. Let's now look at the filter setup. Now the filter setup is obviously a big feature requirement from customers and from the salespeople. The ability to set up filters, let's look at what it used to be in the Attero. There are really two methods. There's Flow Wizard, which is a great new way of setting up filters. But if somebody wanted to set up filters manually, it was a very complex filter setup or method of doing this. So now we've got the ability to use an interface we're calling Filter Builder to allow the user to set up different fields for the filters. And you'll see that in operation right now. So as usual, to set up the filters, we hit the Select Flows button. When that's hit, you see the same selection that we used to see before. Flow Wizard, which is the Calnex specific way of finding flows, including the other buttons that were available before, including Wireshark. But you'll see a new button here called Filter Builder. And Filter Builder is really the filter setup or the user setup of the filters. And you'll see here fields for the different filters, so MAC, for example, and then VLAN tags. And there's a host of all of the standard IP and Ethernet header fields here that the user can enter manually in a very intuitive way. Okay, and we'll see some examples of how this is done for different setups of different fields in this filter builder. So let's first of all perhaps start by looking at all the options available. So you can select under the drop down of ether type, and under ether type you can see all the standard defined formats available here, just as simple selections. So for example, if for this particular example, let's say I wanted to set up a VLAN, I would select the 802.1q VLAN, and then go in and enter the parameters for the VLAN. Let's enter a VLAN ID of 200, and filter on that particular VLAN ID. I could also enter, for example, the IP parameters, so I could enter directly a source address. Let's enter one standard address. And then we enter a destination address. Again, this is a much more intuitive format than was available before. And we just enter these directly into the fields that you see here. We're also just going to specify the IP protocol field to be IPv4 if we wanted to. Again, most of the commonly available predefined formats are available as drop-downs, allowing the user to select these rather than having to remember and set up the byte or the bit pattern. So let's set up the value here of 4 for signifying IPv4, and we press set the filter, and that immediately sets up our filter for the VLAN ether type with the particular parameters for the VLAN ID IP addresses that we've set up. So again, an easy way of setting up filters. Let's do another quick one here with let's maybe take away the VLAN from this field. Let's just go straight to an IP field with the same IP addresses, and maybe let's select a particular type of IP traffic, so that the flows between the same destination and source and destination ports. And maybe for the sake of this, let's select TCP traffic, and maybe we want to impair all the FTP traffic, data traffic that's running between those two IP addresses. So let's select FTP data from the list. And once we've set up those fields, we can see here they're automatically, if you hit flow filter, it gets populated into the filter bank. So filter builder here is a new way of setting up filters exactly as asked for by our customers. One quick point to note here is that filter builder can actually be used in conjunction with flow wizard. So you can actually now use flow wizard to detect flows that are on the line. And for example, remember, flow wizard's power is the ability to automatically classify all flows that are on the line. Let's select a couple of these flows, a VLAN and MPLS, and we can then press set flow filter. And now these two flows are now added to our banks of filters. So now we have 4 filters, 2 of which were set manually using a field we entered ourselves, and 2 of which are set up using flow wizard, so that the 2 modes can be mixed and matched as required. And of course, all of these filters here, the VLAN, the IPv4, the VLAN, and the MPLS, we can give these names as we were able to before. So let's call them VLAN 1. The next flow is the IP flow. Let's call this IP. The third one is another VLAN, so let's just call this VLAN 2. And the fourth flow, of course, is the MPLS flow. Once we set this all up, we can then go back to our GUI, and we can see here the filters and the profiles have been set up, 2 of them manually and 2 of them using Flow Wizard. So Filter Builder really is a key new feature for the Attero as requested by customers, and that Filter Builder is going to expand to cover a lot more fields as required by customer requirements. So Filter Builder, or the user setup of filters, was the first demonstration that we've done. The second one is really the ability to dynamically change impairments on the fly. Again, this is a request that's been made by a number of sources. Before, we used to have to stop our impairments, make changes, and start them again. This caused a lot of consternation with users of the Attero. So obviously we're changing that, and we re-architected the way the product works in a very short period of time to allow you to dynamically change the impairments. So we are going to show you now a demo of these changes happening in multiple ways, but also just a point to note that we are planning for the GA release that these changes will happen hitlessly, meaning no packet drops. Again, another comment been made by many people is that when you start and stop impairments and when you make changes, there are packets being dropped. This is the way that the Attero memory works at the moment, but we're changing that, and so all of these changes will happen hitlessly once the GA release is done. But what you'll be able to see today is the ability now to actually make these changes dynamically and see the impact of that without having to start and stop the Attero impairments as you did before. So this beta software that we have running here, let's set it up. We've got one profile set up here. We'll come on to the bandwidth control later on in this demonstration. But what we want to do now is show you the ability to set up some delays. So let's try first of all with fixed delay. At the moment we've got nothing been set up. What I want to do is enter a small fixed delay. I haven't started the impairment yet. So what I'm going to do now is go back to my the test center, which is generating traffic through the Attero. And in test center I'm seeing now that I have a delay through the Attero, which is really its intrinsic delay. We can see 7 microseconds of delay, which is the intrinsic delay through the Attero. When we start the impairments, that goes up to about 27 microseconds. But remember, we're also adding 100 microseconds of delay. So we should see on the test center 127 microseconds of delay. And indeed, that's exactly what we see now. So that's as per expected. But what's new is now we can go into delay and just change this value dynamically. So I'm going to try several different values here. First of all, just a small step up to 200, and you can see the delay steps up from 127 to 227. So let's try a few more values of changing these the delay and looking at the impact on the test center GUI. So now we've taken it up to 8 milliseconds, and we'll see that's being detected. 8 milliseconds has been detected. What I want to do now is really take it up to 80. Well, let's take it right up to the level of 8 seconds. We'll keep going up. We're now on 800 milliseconds, and let's go up to 8 seconds here at 1 gig. 8 seconds, obviously it will take 8 seconds for the test center to get its packets back, and after 8 seconds we'll see that the full delay here is being generated by the Attero and being picked up. So all of these changes are being made dynamically without the need to start and stop the impairment. So we can go back down to a lower value and you'll see the test center again report exactly what's happening. So this is a big change in the way the Attero works, the ability to dynamically change these values. Let's look now, we've seen the delay aspect, let's look now at the jitter. I'm adding some jitter into that. Again, jitter and delay both work, and we'll see later on also the other corruptions also work. We can add different values of jitter, and very specific values, and we'll see the test center reporting exactly what we've put in. Okay, so the ability to change impairments dynamically and see the impact on the test center or any other measurement device is obviously, as I said, a big change in the way the Attero product is designed to work. You can still stop the impairments, and you can see all the impacts of the impairments disappear. On the test center, you can see the latency go back down to the intrinsic latency. There's no jitter being detected at that time. And what I wanted to show you also is the ability to change not just the delay and jitter, but also the other corruptions and impairments that the Attero can add, and we can change that dynamically. So let's take the example of lost packets or dropped packets. At the moment, let's set up a value here of 0.01% of dropped packets, and let's start the impairments. And again, if we look back at the test center GUI and look at our counters that allow us to look for drop packets and look for that 0.01% dropped frame percentage, we'll see that that's reporting 0.01% as we've set up on the Attero. So let's go and try a few different values of corruptions. Let's change that value to something a bit higher, obviously. Let's try 1% drop packets. And look at the impact on the test center, counting up to 1% drop frames. And again, let's make some other changes to try some different values and make sure that these changes are really shown by the test center. Again, a very accurate and specific example which allows you to demonstrate really how specifically and accurately the Attero is impairing these packets. So the ability to change these values and look at the impact immediately on the test center is incredibly valuable. It is what's been asked for, so you don't have to stop and start the Attero to be able to make these changes, both from the perspective of delay and jitter, as well as the drop packets. And again, going up, down, starting, stopping will have the impact exactly as you expect on the measuring device. Let's look at a quick demo using multiple profiles. We showed you one profile, but this also applies not just to different types of impairments, but also to multiple profiles. So everything is now dynamic. So we're going to show you an example by adding delay to one particular profile, changing that delay. So we've got 500 microseconds of delay on one of, I guess, 6 profiles that have been flows that are going through the Attero. Then if I start those impairments, you can see the intrinsic delay goes up to the active mode, but also on one particular flow, the extra 500 microseconds of delay is added onto the bottom row there in the test center. If I change that now, you'll see that the delay goes up to the delay value that I've set in. What I'm going to do now is go to a different flow and change dropped packets, for example. So now I've got Let's put 7.35. I put particular value of dropped packets, and now I want to go into my my counters and look for that 7.35, and you can see there the dropped frame percentage on a different flow is detecting that 7.35 number that I put in. And again, this is dynamically changeable. If I go in and change that value, the test center should show me that changing. So the ability to dynamically change impairments on the fly, the ability to do that for different types of impairments, and the ability to do that for multiple flows at the same time is a whole new way of working with the Attero, which is, as we said before, is something that you guys have asked for. Okay, well, let's look at something else that's been asked for here. And remember, just before I finished on the dynamic change of impairments, the beta software that you see here today working is available if it's, this isn't required for demonstration purposes. But the beta software does not have the full hitless operation implemented yet. That will be done for the GA release. But today you can demonstrate the dynamic changing of impairments. In fact, we've just demonstrated that with a test center measurement. So let's look now at the final demonstration, which is for bandwidth control. Bandwidth control, of course, was something that's missing from the Attero. So very simply, before there was no bandwidth control. Now we've got bandwidth control, and we're releasing it as promised. However, we're actually releasing more than we promised. We actually originally committed to release just basic bandwidth control, but we're now adding it with, based on feedback, we're adding full advanced policing and shaping to that bandwidth control. So originally, bandwidth control was due to come out at the end of 2013. It's going to be a quarter behind schedule, but that's really because we're delivering a lot more than we originally committed to by adding policing and shaping. So just a quick note for the beta now, we've got shaping that's available for demo. The basic bandwidth control and policing that you'll see later on will be available for GA release. So we'll show you all of the GUI demo of all of this stuff, and then show you a quick demo of the shaping that's been implemented already in the hardware and software for the purpose of demonstration. So, as you've seen before, the bandwidth control is a new button on the impairment screen, and you'll see some new selections here: basic bandwidth control, as well as advanced policing and shaping. So, basic bandwidth control is simply rate limiting that link to a particular rate that you've selected. So obviously there's a drop-down list of the common traffic pipe sizes that are available out there. So these can be selected. For example, if we select DS3, we get a pipe size of 44.7 meg. But also the ability to set up a user-specified, meaning a particular bandwidth. If you want to limit that bandwidth to a particular number, you can enter any bandwidth you want to 1 kilobits per second resolution. So let's just enter a random number here. And also with bandwidth control, you're able to specify the buffer size of a packet buffer. So obviously when you're doing bandwidth control, you limit the bandwidth through the box and the buffer size attached to it. So that's the basic control of the basic mode bandwidth control. If I now select the advanced policing and shaping mode, that gives us policing and shaping ability as defined by the MEF. So now the ability to, remember, policing is really about the packets coming into the Attero, and policing, quite simplistically, is when packets exceed a tolerance or excess level, the packets are dropped. Shaping is about when packets exceed the tolerance or excess, the packets are shaped and they go out according to those limits. Okay, so once again, we set our limits here for the policer and the shaper. If the packets exceed the limits for the policer, they are dropped. If they exceed the limits for the shaper, they are then shaped so that the output from the Attero meets the requirements here. So this is again standard policing and shaping algorithms, and these have been implemented on the Attero. As we'll see shortly, we'll see the shaper in operation. We can set any values that we want here that are applicable, and each of these fields are settable in the Attero GUI. We've also got the ability to drop oversized packets in the shaper, and whether or not to include the layer 1 bytes when we're talking about byte measurement. So the byte limits specify whether we do or don't include layer 1 bytes. So we can set up policing and shaping as well as just a basic bandwidth control, and this is a feature, as I said, that's been long overdue on the Attero. So what we're going to do now is really show a very quick demonstration of the working part of this feature, which is the shaper. As I said, the policer and the basic bandwidth control will be available in GA release. We will do beta drops in the meantime to be able to demonstrate stuff as and when available. But let's look at the basic shaper here. So we put in a rate of 200 meg that we want to shape the outgoing traffic to. We do want to include the layer 1 offset, so including the layer 1 bytes, we want the output from the Attero to meet the 200 meg number. So let's look at this coming out of the Attero on a test center. So here we've got test center sending 212 meg or 213 megs, and coming out of the Attero is exactly 200 megs, exactly as we've specified. If I now go back into the bandwidth control, so remember this is the layer 1 stuff. If I now go and do not include the layer 1 bytes in the calculations, then now my throughput will be 200 meg for not including the layer 1. So here we've got the 200 meg there for the bytes not including the layer 1. And you can see the layer 1 stuff does exceed that 200 meg number. And of course, when I turn the shaper off, I should now be getting the full bandwidth through the box that I'm sending out. And you can see here the 212, 600, 700 number. What we send out is what we get back. Okay, so just a quick summary there then of the new features on the Attero product. We have the ability to let's have a reminder there of what are the features that we showed you. So we showed you a new feature called Who's Using the Box. It tells you who's connected to the box, if someone else is when you're trying to connect. The ability filter builder to set up filters manually. Again, this is a completely added way of working in addition to the great filter wizard, flow wizard that we had before on the Attero. The ability to change impairments on the fly without having to start and stop, and the ability to do all that without having hits. So the hit list changes the impairments. And then finally, we showed you a demonstration of the GUI for the bandwidth control, as well as a working working demonstration of the shaping part of that algorithm. Okay, well that was the end of the recording and the demonstration. Good luck in selling Attero, guys.